And Jesus sees what is happening to them. And notice what Jesus does not do. He doesn't blow a whistle. Hey, everybody, I need your attention for just a moment. A terrible thing has happened. There's a mistake has been made. Preparations were not made for you. It was about to be a disaster, but I've come to avert this. If you'll all come watch, you'll notice these jars have been filled with water, and we're about to take... It doesn't happen. Very quietly, what happens is Jesus gives something of himself to remove the shame from this family. There is an incredible modesty and reticence in our Lord Christ. Time and time and time again in the course of the Gospels, he will perform some miraculous act and then say to the people, now don't tell anyone about this. I think that's why the disciples placed their faith in him. It was not the water that was transformed into wine, it was the shame that was transformed into grace that struck them, that caught them, that drew them in. You see, Jesus came to show us that the truth is God is our loving Father who brought us into this world and wants nothing more than that we would live in God's world, in God's way, and discover for ourselves his great joy. Jesus did not come to beat us up because of our sin. He came to bind us up because we're broken. At the end of his ministry, by the way, Jesus will gather these same disciples who were there, who placed their faith in him at this wedding, and he'll take them to a table and share with them wine and bread. He'll tell them these elements represent my body and my blood. They are a new covenant, broken and spilled for you. I want you to take them into yourself. I want you to understand that I am a part of who you are. And then Jesus went out from that place and gave all of himself to take on and to save us from all of our shame and all of our guilt and all of our sin. And he has asked us to keep this meal, to renew it time and again as a reminder of God's public and God's private love. God's public love that sent his Son to live and to die and to be raised again to atone for our sin, and his private love quietly taking away our shame, bearing our burdens, renewing and transforming us. Wouldn't it be great if it could happen again? Wouldn't you love to be at that wedding and see that water has been turned into wine? St. Augustine says it does. It happens all the time. St. Augustine said, water is always being transformed into wine. Every time the rain falls down from heaven and wets the ground and feeds the seed which grows into a vine and matures into a grape, every time grapes are harvested and crushed and the juice is poured into casks and allowed to ferment, water has indeed turned into wine. Augustine said the difference at Cana in Galilee was God chose to do quickly what God usually does at a more deliberate pace. I think what Augustine meant by that is the whole world is a miracle. You didn't get here by your earning. Life is grace. Birth is windfall. You are here at the gracious invitation of another. If you think about it in those terms, it's not the pace at which things happen, but that they happen at all that is a miracle. Your life is a product of God's gracious invitation to be here. And if we would choose to see the events that take place around us as the working of God's hand, if we would look for those places where water is indeed in the course of life being transformed into wine, if we would know sometimes God chooses to do that in a moment and sometimes God chooses to take a season, but either way it is God's grace working itself out in the world, then we could spend our lives finding where God is working and discovering his joy. If we would choose to spend our days seeing the way that God is active in the world, then we could make the decision to be co-laborers, collaborators, partners with God in the work of redeeming the creation and bringing all things together, things in heaven and things on earth together under one head, even the King. We could spend our days binding up the brokenhearted. Do you see what this story says? It says that the one who refused to turn stones into bread to feed himself was willing to turn water into wine to take away the shame of a peasant in a village that was not even his own. It was Jesus' way of beginning his ministry with the clear announcement, behind everything you see is boundless love and incredible kindness. If you look deeply into this story, I think what you will see that it is saying is, God wills you good. He wants you to be. He has called you from nothing into something. He has atoned for your sin and your guilt and your shame. And if you will choose to put your faith in Him, I think you will see His glory and find His joy in the walking of your days.